In today's video, we're going to look into a tool panel of Pixelmator Pro. So we will try each and every tool from the tool panel you can find on the right side of your screen. So here I am, and as you may notice, on the left there's a layer panel only, and all of the tools are on the right side. So more and more programs actually do that when they kind of move our layers to the left, give us more space for layers, and tools are now on the right. So not like in the past in Photoshop that everything is kind of on the left here. So it's kind of flipped. So let's get started with the very first tool. That's our Arrange tool, also called Move tool. And this will allow us to move objects around, but also to make basic transformations, like you can scale stuff down, you can put some rotation on objects, you can flip. And as you may notice, right now I'm using this panel on the right, and this panel will depend on the active tool. So you can set the properties of active tool. All right, let me just undo with Command Z so we can revert back to this state. And I already showed you that we can make some basic transformations, and also we can make basic alignments. So if you've got multiple objects, you can align them to the center, to the left, to the right. You can control the size of the image here, exact position. We can also make some groups and lock layers from it. All right. So that's the very first tool, a very important one. I also like to use Arrange tool as a neutral tool that I refer back. If I'm not sure what to do next, I don't like to have any other tool active. I don't jump back here by clicking V on my keyboard. Below that we got styles. And here we can save styles and reuse them later. This is referring directly to layers or objects. So let's get another layer so we can test it out. All right, with this rectangle on my screen, now I can very easily just click on the style to apply it. Now I'm in the gradients, but we can switch between different styles that will give us different fill colors or gradient colors and stuff like that. So that's more like a swatches panel, you can say. We can of course add new styles ourselves. There's a huge button, add style. You control the opacity of the whole thing. Here's the gradient. I can change those built-in colors. We can add stroke around, so let's just do just that with black stroke around. We can control the line, the thickness of the line, inner shadow, outer shadow. All right, so that can be helpful when you're making some kind of composition. Not very much for like photo editing, but if you're adding text, shapes, or you've got 3 different photos in one composition, this can be pretty handy. It's like a separate tool called style, but in most programs it's more like a panel, not a tool. All right, below that we got color adjustments, and keep in mind I'm adjusting the active layer. So right now I'm on this rectangle. Let's get rid of that, and right now I'm adjusting the main layer with the image. So we got groups of adjustments that are ready to use, just like that. Or we got all of those sliders below that we can modify ourselves. So that's very handy. We can have selective colors and changing how vibrant they are. We can move the tone of the color. All of that, very handy. Take a look. Below here we got original, that we can just press and hold to see the original image. And we can, in any moment, we can reset back to original and start this process over. As you can see, this is a very modern interface, something that some of those older programs cannot really do, because they got like loyal users for like 15 years and they expect this interface in a certain manner, so they cannot really follow the newest like UI user interface design trends. But here, as you can see, we got those controls that are very intuitive. We can just drag stuff around and very quickly get our result. And like always, hold here, see the original, or reset completely. All right, so all of the familiar options for adjusting colors, like color replacement, fading, black and white, of course. All of that is here under this one tool. So if you are into photo editing, you should definitely explore this third tool on the list. That would be one of the most important things. All right, let's reset and move to the next one. What's below that tool? Effects. Again, we got certain effects. There are many pre-made effects already when you can click on, and some of those effects got variables or sliders, like here, when we can modify what is the lead color of this effect and how strong is it, how bright, how dark. So again, we got multiple ready-to-use effects, and many of them come with sliders that we can customize really. All right, below that we can make selections to create masks or to copy part of the image into a new layer, and then you can of course work with just that layer. You can apply different effects, filters and color only to that layer. Don't forget to deselect if you don't need the selection. Clicking here, you can clean the selection and take a look. We can select the subject, and now it's automatically selecting the subject of the image. With selection like that, we can refer back to like effects, and now I'm putting effect only on the selected area. So that's really cool. And I did not do any manual selection. As you can see, even those little details like her here are preserved. Unfortunately, they select a bit too much, like this stone here. That's what I should deselect before applying this effect. So I can go back to selection. I can now use subtract mode, and I can deselect this part as well. Or I can move below, because right now I'm using rectangle here, so that's already like a very chunky tool, but I can go below and I got a lasso tool, and I'm still in the subtract mode. Take a look, there are same modes for all of the selection tool. So I'm subtracting from existing selection. Let's deselect for a second so I can show you that this is a proper lasso tool when we can make a freehand selections. As I mentioned, we do selections so we can limit effects. They will only work inside the selection. All right, and I think the next one is more important for us. It's called quick selection tool. And in this case, we will have a proper brush that kind of highlighting those elements. So now I can hold down and make it like selected by myself, but with help of the quick selection tool. If the brush is too large, you can modify it here, so I can make it smaller, move to the add mode, because we continue on with the same selection, and we can build up this selection. As you can see, it's a bit more precise than the previous one, this auto selection with like machine learning. So that can be a happy medium between manual selection and auto selection. With selection like that, I can go back to, let's say, color adjustments, and the adjustment I will put on will only happen inside that selection. So keep that in mind. If you don't want this to happen only inside the selection, you need to deselect. So whenever you are in the selection tool, you can see deselect here at the bottom. That's very important to deselect if you don't plan to use the selection anymore. You can also reselect if you did that by mistake, or if you got selection, then you go back to work on the whole image, and then you need the very same selection, you can reselect. That's really handy addition to the selection tool. All right, so there are 3 selection tools here, and keep in mind, if you press and hold, you got alternative version. Like for example, for quick selection, we got color selection, when we can limit ourselves to selecting certain colors. Very handy if you got like red car on the natural backdrop, we can do the red color selection and save some time. Same for the lasso tool. As you can guess, we got the classic set of 3 different freehand tools, like completely freehand, the one that is polygonal for squarish like objects, and the one magnetic that will try to snap to the contrasting colors. And I already showed you this one. This is just for different shapes. All right, we are now out of the selection tools, and just below that we got paint. This is usually called a brush tool in different software. As you can guess, it's a simple brush when you can put colors on. I do not recommend to use it directly on the layer with the image. So let's undo that. Feel free to create a new layer. So click this plus. We got empty layer above. We can change the brush tip. Take a look. Many artistic brushes. All right. And we can of course select the proper color for ourselves. Brush size, softness, opacity. There are some advanced settings. And if you are using a mouse like me, you can add some smoothing to help yourself. You can control the brush size using also square brackets on your keyboard. That's what I usually do. And now you're painting with the brush, but good news is all of that is on the new layer. Take a look. So it's way easier to control or to blend with the original image because we can modify blending modes or opacity of that layer. All right, so that's our brush tool. It's called Paint here. Below that is also Pixel Paint. As you can guess, it will be something more like a squarish 1 pixel brush without any anti-aliasing, so that's nice. Then there's a little bucket icon for filling objects with certain colors. And again, in this case, you can click and hold to change the tolerance. So I'm still holding my mouse down and I can change the tolerance while I'm applying this. So that's really handy UI solution here. Of course, we can modify the color, opacity, and we can decide on preserving transparencies if you got like some kind of PNG and you want to recolor some logo or letters quickly. Below that is also gradient tool hidden, so we can apply nice gradients. Keep in mind, gradient got a live preview and it will replace all of the pixels on the current container. So in my case, that was the original image. I don't want this to happen, so I create a new empty layer. I go back to the layer of the image. What will happen if I use like quick selection now and try to select only like outside area here? Go to the empty layer and then use the gradient on that empty layer. All right, and then we can of course modify opacity, blending mode and stuff like that. So as you can see, it's usually not a case of using one single tool. It's more like jumping between tools to get our effects applied correctly. All right, so that's a gradient tool, give us a smooth transition between two colors. What next? That's eraser tool, so opposite to the paint. We got some kind of brush tip that will erase all of the pixels. We can control the very same thing. Brush size, softness. If you've got very soft thing, you can make it like fading away. So that can be interesting effect sometimes. The advanced settings similar as in the proper brush. We can even change the brush tip to be more artistic if you want to use the eraser to create some artistic effect. Take a look. Like we got some texture now here on this color with the eraser tool. Keep in mind, we are destroying pixels, we are erasing them. So be mindful, maybe make a copy of the layer you are working with. All right. Below eraser, we got smart eraser. To test this one, I will go back to this image. And now I will first test the option to remove backdrop automatically. All right, not perfect, but in many cases, it's a good solution. Let's undo. Now I will click, and again, very same thing like with the flat tool. So we can click and hold to change the tolerance of the smart eraser based on the main color, the first color you selected. If I click here, the first color is this water, so the tolerance will affect the water more than sky. All right. Below that, we got a repair tool that can be used to repair a small portion of the image. You can erase some stuff with it. Again, modify the size of it to match your needs. It will analyze the area around and try to smooth the texture. So you've got like one little pimple somewhere, it should work just fine. But in this case here, you need to be really careful Okay, we managed to remove the tattoo with just Repair tool, so that's nice. Below that, we got Clone tool. In the Clone tool, the Repair tool is more like picking the random stuff from all around, but in the Clone tool you can select the source. So I can set up the source here on the tattoo, and now I'll be cloning this to another area, and it will be like kind of smoothly integrated with that. It's almost like opposite of Repair, but not really. The biggest difference is you selecting the source yourself. So you can be really precise with that. So if you need more precision, the Repair tool, use this one. Below, we got Sharpen. So opposite of the blur, sharpening up edges, increasing the contrast a little bit. Then we got Light. All right. Below that, there's a pen tool that allows us to draw a proper vector shape. So if you're into illustrating elements, making icons on logos, keep in mind you can make a proper vector shape that is later on can be modified with the node tool, and we can also use the pen tool in the freehand mode when you just draw it like with any other tool. If you double tap on the vector shape, you got chance to move those nodes or even delete the one you don't need anymore. So there's a lot of flexibility with vector shapes. Vector shapes can be always recolor. You can fill them with colors or with gradients. You can create a stroke around as well, or get rid of the stroke. And with vector shapes, we need to talk about some pre-made shapes, and that's the next tool on the list. Here it is, Shape tool. We got some pre-made shapes, all of them are vector shapes, and they can be also used as masks. So if you have a second image, let's first draw one of those vector shapes. Let's grab this one. Perfect. And if I got a second image, so let me just load the second one. I'll just drag and drop the second image. All right, I got the second image, and now I can use a vector shape as the mask for this image below. Simply move it above the shape, right click, and then we can create a clipping mask, just like that. So vector shapes can be really handy for making some masks. And nowadays, there's also a new mask menu added in the last update. So you can literally select the layer, head here, and then there's a mask menu above in the layer panel, when we can select some common shapes, also custom shapes, or draw with the pen tool or pencil tool straight away from this menu. Take a look. Now we can have this inside the oval. Let me zoom out so you can see it better. Just like that, we got like oval mask straight away. So that's what we usually use vector shapes in the photo editing software for masking. All right, only 3 tools left. So next one is a text tool. That's rather straightforward. You click, it will add a new layer when you can type your text, apply colors, effects, all that stuff. Below that, we got a tool that I never used, that zoom tool. I don't see a point of clicking on the separate tool to just zoom in and out. I usually use the top slider when I use my mouse, or I simply use Command plus or Command minus on my keyboard. So I never ever touch this tool. Then there's a crop tool, when we can crop certain pixels out. We can auto crop, we can straighten the image. That's a helpful feature as well. We can straighten the image. And if you are ready, you just click apply. You must confirm your changes. And here it is, a new version. As I mentioned, some of those tools, when you hold, you got option below, in this case, export for web. So you can very quickly export this new crop as the new file like PNG and save it on your drive very quickly without like going into exports and all that stuff. So that's handy as well, and not many people know about that this is hidden below the crop tool. So export and we can save it. All right, and that's our tool panel on the right. Keep in mind, some of those tools got alternative version. So just click and hold, and instead of classic typing tool, you will see a text on the circle or on the path or free form text. So many of those tools comes with those alternative options. You can see this little triangle. That means that there's another tool hidden below. So don't forget to check it out as well. they're grouped nicely. So for example, with sharpening, we got also softening or smudging, right? So that's logical order. So that's a very brief introduction of the tool panel on the right. Of course, there's more to it. There are more options that we can open up from the layer panel or from the top menu. So stay tuned for more tutorials for Pixelmator Pro. I will see you in the next video.